Welcome to Commander Pop Culture, a place to gather magical information with some laughs, might I add. Hello everyone, welcome. It's Modern Horizons 3, the final day, covering the end of the spoilers. I'm not going to hold anybody up, and we'll just get started with the cool looking stuff and the new stuff. First off, we have Arena of Glory. Enters battlefield tapped unless you have a mountain, one of the 5 colored utility lands, and then taps for red, tap it to exert it. If you don't remember what exert is, it was introduced in Amonkhet block, and it's the art style that they chose for it. Once you exert something, it does it on tap on the next untap step.
You seem tired.
You can abuse this thing with stuff that untaps things with an activated ability. The classic was using Kiora's Follower with some kind of permanent that had exertion, or you could use Intruder Alarm kind of stuff. Anyways, what it does is add double red, so you net 1 mana back, and if it's spent on a creature, it gains haste on a turn. Not a bad utility land. Tempt with Mayhem. Tempting Offer. Choose target instant or sorcery spell. Each opponent may copy that spell and may choose new targets for the copy they control. You copy the spell once, plus an additional time for each opponent copy to the spell this way. They choose new targets.
This seems a little dangerous.
You just give every person an opportunity to copy stuff, and then for every person who does copy it, you get an additional 1. So no matter what, you're getting at least 1, and then if 2 other people decide to copy it as well, you make 2 more copies of something. In this scenario of someone casting a spell and you cast this and everybody says yes to it, oh god, 5 copies on the stack? I can only imagine what terrible spell would be there that you'd want to copy 3 times. Broodmate Tyrant. On ETB, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token flying. And it has Encore. If you don't know what Encore is, you pay its Encore cost, and then you make a copy for each opponent tapped and attacking. If you go through the full cycle, like you play it on its normal way, you get a 5/5 dragon. You do the Encore effect, you get 3 more in the event of playing Commander because you have 3 opponents. So in total power, you will net just from the tokens. Pretty powerful. Barrogoyf. Death Touch Lifelink. Its power is equal to number of card types summon cards in all graveyards. Whenever it deals damage to a player, you may mill that many cards. If you do, you may put a creature card from among them back into your hand. Unfortunately, you only get a choice of 1, but for 3 CMC, this is a pretty scary Goyf, and if you manage to mill a bunch, just choose the best one, and I think you'll still be happy. Sawhorn Nemesis. On ETB, choose a player. If source would deal damage to chosen player permanent,
make it double!
For 4 mana, that's pretty wild. Polygoid has Trample and Myriad. If you don't know what Myriad does, on attacks, you make a tapped and attacking token for your other opponents. So you'll max get 2 because you already have the original copy attacking someone. Infested Thrinax has Flash. On ETB, until end of turn, whatever non-token creature you control dies, create a number of 1/1 saplings equal to that creature's power. It's a until end of turn effect that's kind of interesting. If you have a way to loop a creature from your graveyard with like Gravecrawler, you could make a very large amount of sap rollings. I think when they designed this card, it was for the purpose of answering or doing stuff post board wipes, but you could break this in a combo deck as well. Ravenous Hellkite. When you cast a spell, each player sacks X creatures, enters battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters for each creature stacked this way. It's pretty steep because it's double X. It also has Flying and Trample. It could be really big if you make people sack enough creatures. You get 2 counters per thing that dies. Exterminator Mage Mark. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell that targets only a single non-land permanent an opponent controls, if another opponent controls 1 or more non-land permanents that spell could target, choose one of those permanents, copy that spell. Well, it basically turns your instants and sorceries into 2-for-1s. Not bad. I like this a lot. It also has for a black and a colorless regenerate. Pretty scary 4-drop. It also looks kind of cool. Makes me think of Transformers a little bit. Wow. This is a cool uncommon. Creature tokens you control will have Evolve. It's a very powerful effect. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield with power or toughness greater than the token, it'll get a +1/+1 counter thrown on it. I'd say if you're playing a token themed deck and you play a variety of different tokens, you could scale your smaller ones up to your biggest ones pretty consistently with this thing. It's unique and niche. You can't just throw this in any token deck. If you're all about making just one token type, it doesn't work. But I think I would want to try this in my Volo deck because it's 2 unique typings I already don't run in that list. and I make token copies of a variety of different stuff. Seems really easy to take advantage of. Molten Gatekeeper, 2/3 for 3. It's another Impact Tremors for 3 mana. There's a card that came out in New Capenna. This will fit nicely in the Purphoros decks. If you like Purphoros or doing Purphoros kinds of things, throw this in there. I think the other like classic red is like Norn the Wary. Get to abuse stuff like this. Man, we've come a long way from Dragon Whelp. Now we have Fledgling Dragon, which is just strictly better. If you have Threshold, you get the stat increase and becomes a 5/5 and it has Fire Breathing. What's the unique difference between this and Dragon Whelp is Dragon Whelp always has Fire Breathing. This does not until you meet the Threshold requirement. Cool Cheap Dragon. Fetid Gargantua is kind of interesting. It's a common where if you counters get thrown on this, you get to draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. Any +1/+1 theme deck that has black in it, this is nice for card advantage. Arcbound Condor has modulars for whenever another artifact enters the battlefield under your control. Target creature an opponent controls gets -1/-1 till end turn. It's a plinker. Kills off little tiny things. If you're playing affinity kind of stuff and you like to balance your artifacts, you could probably clean up the board quite nicely with this. Ooh, Accursed Marauder. I like this common because it's an edict effect that forces you to sacrifice a non-token creature. It's a stronger edict effect than what we've had traditionally. If you have to deal with token decks, edict effects just sucked, but this makes your opponent sacrifice something substantial.
Yeah, makes a man feel good.
Of course it does. Why shouldn't it?
Rather than a token they got for free. Aggressive Biomancy. You make X tokens. The tokens are copies of something you already have in play, and it has to be something you control, which is a bit of a bummer, but when they enter, they fight something I don't control. I rarely play double X spells. If I do, they're extremely powerful, and this kind of falls in that category where the juice is just not quite worth the squeeze. Sneaky Snacker's kind of interesting. When you draw your 3rd card, you return it from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. This kind of wants to be played in Dredge or the Narco Amoeba old school modern decks with like Arclight Phoenix. So they just played a bunch of cantrip spells that cost 1, and they returned all their like prized amalgams, their Sarcoamoebas, the Creeping Chills. This kind of fits that same kind of category. Refurbished Familiar. If you like discard decks, this might be one for you, because in the event that it ETBs and your opponents can't discard a card, like if you're playing a discard themed deck, that will happen and these cards become dead in your library. This will instead net you a card. It's really nice. It's like a ETB clause from the Bat God slapped onto this. Envoy of the Ancestors. This is kind of unique that they made an Outlast card and then they made it so modified creatures you control have lifelink. Modified includes not just counters, but equipment and auras as well. So I think this will get more play based on the diversity of decks that are out there. It's strictly better than the previous Outlast cards that gave some kind of static effect based on counters that are on your stuff. I like this card a lot. This is an interesting common. Taps for colorless, you could sack it to search for Mardu basic colors or cycle it for Mardu. This thing's really dope. Grixis one, the Sultai one, Abzan, Esper, Teamer. There are 10 in total. Bant, Jund, Naya, Jeskai. Oh man. That's awesome. If you're playing 3 or more colored decks, I think this will be a staple. Just for the utility of they're good at every stage of the game. In the early game, you could afford to put things into play tap. If you're missing colors and you want to smooth out your mid game, that middle ability is better. And then the cycling part is great for the late game when you don't want to be drawing lands anymore.
All of the world's wants.
It's much better than I think most will give it credit. Okay, this is an NBFC land that can shock yourself to be untapped, and it's a monk that could return instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. It also has prowess. Not bad. Cursed Wombat. It gives all your opponents the ability to put additional counters on your stuff, but it can only happen once a turn. So if you're all about putting single-thing counters on your stuff multiple times in a single turn, this isn't ideal. But if you could do it at instant speed on other people's turns, it's 4 times the revolution. I think certain decks will want this Mothman because they have the mill trigger, and Mothman triggers whenever they mill a non-land card. So you get to put counters on X creatures based on how many cards are milled. Those decks are built so it forces people to mill something on everybody's turns. I mean, that's just the rads mechanic in general, but the deck construction even beyond just rads also does that. So I think that would be a nice fit in those decks. That brings us to the end of the Modern Horizon 3 spoilers. I'm going to be posting this sometime this morning, 5 or 6 a.m. I think that's what my analytics are telling me I should be posting my stuff, so I'm going to try releasing my stuff on a schedule now. I'm just trying out new things. My future plans, if you stuck around this long and you enjoyed, I post up little community tabs. I'm going to put up another voting thing because I normally play minimally 8 commanders from each set. Depends on how much I like the set. I think there's at least 4 more commanders. I know off the top of my head I want to play 2 more at the very minimum, so I'll just add another 2 on there. And people can make your votes on that list as well. But so far, people really want me to play Necrobloom, so that'll probably be the first deck I feature on the channel after I finish up the Thunder Junction deck techs and gameplays. Not only do I talk the talk, I walk the walk. I feel like it's responsible of me if I'm going to be making content about budget decks and making recommendations on what people should play and invest money into. I should be the one that also does that, puts my money where the mouth is. And I usually have a great time playing them on Moto, and I usually fare pretty consistently well despite kind of playing with my arms behind my back. The budget decks in paper don't translate that well into Moto. If you're new here and you haven't heard this spiel before, but cards on Moto are incredibly cheap. Like, you could play Mana Drain for 50 cents on Moto. So I have to play against some really powerful decks. Normally my decks on Moto come out to be less than $10 investment to play or build. So we're going to see how these last 4 Thunder Junction goes over. I'm going to put out another vote for the next 4 commanders. Subscribe. I got plenty of stuff coming down the docket. Everyone take care now. Bye.